Welcome to Real Demers, where we champion the B-sides, the offbeat, and the overlooked. We've worked in and around Hollywood, so we know just how hard it is to get a movie made. This is our space to celebrate cinematic misfits that we hope you'll enjoy as much as we do. Today's entry is a B-side, pretty offbeat, and definitely overlooked. Brew a pot of coffee because we're going to stay up all night to chase some punks. We're watching John McTiernan's Nomads. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Bellavia, and I'm here with
Andre Sanglani.
And this might be the first Real Demers entry that we stumbled upon by accident. I went to an all-night horror fest over at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica, and the movies are a secret, but they give you clues, and some of the films were easier to guess than others. And for the sixth and final film of the night, there was a clue involving Ted Nugent, and people online latched onto Nomads being that film because Ted Nugent helped contribute to this soundtrack. And I was looking it up. It brought back memories of me seeing the trailer to this years ago, seeing the poster in the theater and seeing like the box cover art, but I'd never seen the film. And part of me got kind of excited. Oh, this will be a fun way to kind of close out the show. And then it turns out that the clue was pointing to Dr. Nugent, a character featured in the bonkers Sasquatch movie, Night of the Demon. And Night of the Demon is an amazing flick to close a horror-thon on, but that's a Real Demers episode for another day. So I had Nomads on the brain, and a few days after the marathon, I threw it on just to finally just kind of check it off the list, just see what that trailer I remembered and what the poster was all about. It surprised me, and I kind of mentioned it to Andreas, and we kind of went from there. Now, Andreas, had you ever heard of Nomads before?
I had heard of it. I had never seen it. I kind of knew that it was McTiernan's first film and that Pierce Brosnan was in it.
It's John McTiernan, better
Yeah.
known for Predator, Die Hard, Last Action Hero, The Hunt for Red October, some like huge hits of the day. This was their first movie. And what an interesting way to kind of come out of the gate. It was based on a novel, which I think it kind of it explains maybe why this is as all over the place as it is, trying to adapt a full book into this. But they wrote the screenplay, so full credit there. And we'll kind of get into kind of some of the shockwaves that resulted from this film. But this was them kind of right out of the gate, first feature.
You know, it's interesting. I've had conversations with people when talking about John McTiernan. And recently I listened to a podcast and it kind of does this too. They're so dismissive of Nomads that they're quick to sort of count Predator as McTiernan's first real feature debut, which I think is a disservice to what this film does really well.
Well, I was thinking beforehand, kind of how once we dive into this, like my thoughts on it, and it's like if somebody was like, "Oh, is Nomads a bad movie?" I'd be like, "What are you? No, it's full of cool stuff. It's really there's a lot of striking imagery." And they'd be like, "Oh, is it a good movie?" I'd be like, "Well."
Exactly.
So,
It's definitely one of those movies where and again I hadn't seen it, so I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't even watch the trailer. Once you said let's watch it, I was like, okay, I'll just go in cold and see. You know, I know we haven't really gotten into the plot description yet, but spoiler alert, Pierce Brosnan dies like in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And I got a little upset because again, not having seen the trailer, not knowing much about it, I thought it was going to be one of those movies where he had shot this before he blew up in popularity, so that it was going to be, oh, released after he became super famous and he's only in one scene for like 2 minutes. I was worried it was going to be one of those movies. And I was also disappointed that I might not be able to get lost in Pierce Brosnan's eyes for the
oh,
rest of the movie. But
so
no,
dreamy.
both those things were quickly rectified. So
In one sentence, we're going to talk more than one sentence throughout the podcast, but just to kick things off, in one sentence, what is Nomads about?
there's a lot going on in this movie. The overall plot description, and I kind of had to go to Wikipedia to find the best one. The story involves a French anthropologist who is an expert on nomads. He stumbles across a group of urban nomads who turn out to be more than he expected. Now, that's pretty broad strokes in terms of the overall plot. A lot more is going on here, which I think we can get into, but that's the basic structure of it.
That's well put. I think if you had to get to the meat of it, that's the story. Anthropologist discovers some transients living in Los Angeles and kind of becomes obsessed with them, and it kind of balloons from there. Now, how that story is told and why everything's happening gets a little convoluted, but that is the main heart of the matter. This kind of came and went and not well received. I believe Ebert gave it 1.5 stars and called it really confusing. And I'm not going to say I'm not going to pretend it's not confusing at times. I think there's a more A to B version of this plot that we can kind of get into as we go. But to me, the pros far outweigh the cons. Not to say there's not cons, not to say it's not even not confusing, but I think the movie looks great. I like the performances. I think there's some interesting mystery stuff here. I didn't mind getting lost at times because I was never like, ugh, what's happening? Oh, I don't understand anymore. Like, even though I can't answer, like, even piercing the plot together from A to B, I think we would run into some problems. I'm not like put off by that, and I enjoyed the ride.
Agreed. I wasn't bored at all. The atmosphere that McTiernan's able to create with the music, the cinematography, the overall feeling of dread that just is oozing out of this film, it kept my attention the entire time.
And I think just to try and wrangle, because as we go, we can get into like specifics. To wrangle it, it's the movie starts with Pierce Brosnan dying, just like Andreas said, and he's in the hospital. And he says something in French to a doctor, and then basically the story is his spirit possessing her. So the movie from there is flashing back to what happened to him. How did he get involved with these nomad characters around Los Angeles? And half, what is she going to do about it now that she's possessed? She ends up escaping, like she's bleeding. She's having like an episode. The other doctors can't figure out like what's happening to her because she's possessed. She leaves the hospital. So it's also part of a mystery of trying to find her and what's going to happen to her as she's kind of dealing with all this. So you're juggling multiple stories at the same time. And the movie is kind of doling information out in pieces. So it's never kind of laying out, oh, okay, this is exactly what's happening. So I get the confusion angle, but between the flashback with Pierce Brosnan becoming more and more interested with these kind of menacing characters and a possession angle, there's always something to kind of hold your interest.
It is confusing. I mean, it took a while for me to kind of figure out what was happening, and I still have questions, but I wasn't bored. And I had texted you at one point in the middle of the film. I just texted you, this movie's creepy.
On top of that, it's like story level number one, anthropologist moves to Los Angeles with his wife. And they're used to like traveling. There's photos up on the wall. You get this snapshot, literally and metaphorically, of how they used to live. And now they're here in this major metropolitan area. You can tell he's a little bummed out by that. It's basically, it's like he's kind of like, hey, he's hanging up his spurs. He's not going to be out there like anymore. His house gets vandalized by these punks. I really don't know what else to call it. They're like this weird gang in a van. And it's basically a shrine to a murder that happened. And he, instead of being scared of that, he's like, oh, what type of people would do this? So he opts to, when he sees the van, he's going to follow them. And then realizing that they're kind of nomadic in nature themselves, that gets his juices going. Like this is something. So it's like, here he is almost retired with his wife and getting put out to pasture. And now all of a sudden he's got a mystery to solve. And even though it's dangerous, that interests him. I love that as a hook. I think it's great.
I agree. I really liked that. And, this, forgive me if you already mentioned it, this was a pretty low budget film. And I really liked the exposition of character through the photographs. It's a very clever way of showing how traveled Palmier, who is the Pierce Brosnan character, how traveled he is on a low budget. And it's obvious he's been all over the world. He's studied and lived in various cultures. And I also appreciate how it shows he's a man outside of fear. He's more curious. Like you said, he's not scared of these punks who vandalized his house, which works for how he wants to study these urban nomads. And at first I was surprised at how seemingly chill and nonchalant his wife Veronique was acting with Dr. Flax when she came to visit her later on. But I had to remind myself that she's traveled with him as well, and she's encountered all these different things. So she would approach any event with more curiosity than fear as well, at least at first, because obviously when things start attacking you, then fear should take over, which it does.
Yeah. And then I think there's a great scene where he gets back after following them for 30 hours. And like, I think he even like writes on a piece of paper, like, don't they sleep? He's just like, when are they going to like slow down? And they never slow down. He gets home and he's like energized from this really dangerous, like he sees them, it appears, kill someone. And when he tries to follow up, the body is gone. But like, they're definitely these menacing figures. And when he gets back, the wife kind of discovers what he's been looking into. And the wife freaks the fuck out on him. And she's like slapping. It's like, why would you put yourself into such a dangerous situation? And he explains that they're nomads. And like, it's too interesting for him not to get involved, for good or for bad.
It's his character. Yeah,
Yep.
it's his character. That's what he does.
So that's level one. I mean, that's level one of the story. Level two is they're supernatural. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, even on the poster, the poster is kind of wildly misleading. It's like him with like two like ghouls over his shoulder. Like that never really shows up in the film. Yes, they're supernatural, but they don't really take on like that form that you see on the poster. That level of these not tethered by, like the laws of nature figures. What do they want? Do they want him? That type of thing. That's level two. Level three is the possession angle. And I think this is where it becomes like a little brass tacks. I don't think we need all three levels. It's like pick two of these levels.
Yeah.
So it could have been like the supernatural part of the story could have been the possession and her trying to bring justice to the punks that killed him. Or lose the possession angle. It's just the story of this anthropologist kind of like with these punks and like the wife. Stacking them all on top of each other, I enjoy each thread. I don't think they need to all be here because I think that's where the confusion is, trying to juggle these different elements.
It's funny you mentioned the poster and how misleading it was. On Letterboxd, I read Patrick Willems wrote a review, and it's the poster. This is a terrifying supernatural horror movie. The actual movie. A woman remembers Pierce Brosnan being harassed by some punks in a van.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, when you bring it down to its base level, that's pretty much it. But there's a lot of cool stuff happening here.
Well, I mean, it's punching above its weight class across a couple of categories.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yes.
Slick as hell. Like if you like that 80s slick look, looks great. Really good soundtrack, just like Bill Conti, like was in charge with the contribution of Ted Nugent, like a rockin' score. Now, I'm not sure if you ever woke up like late at night, you're hungry, you kind of go in the fridge, you start rating, you start like assembling things into a meal, and it like hits the spot. But it's also a meal you're never going to try and replicate again. That's kind of this movie where it's like you're throwing a whole bunch of stuff in. Is this soundtrack, this rockin' soundtrack, the best scary soundtrack in the world? Maybe not, but like it's still there's good stuff in the soundtrack. It looks fantastic. Game cast, interesting script. How they all work together, I'm shrugging if you can't see me, but like I appreciate the effort behind each one of these elements.
As he's following the van, as Pierce Brosnan's character is following the van for the 30 hours, this rock song is playing, and there's a lyric that goes, "Who is the hunter? Who is the prey?" And I just love that was just so on the nose with it at the moment where he's trying to figure out who these people are.
That's the one thing we'll explain. Is actually
exactly.
The rest of it you're in the dark on. And look, this we like that. Like I walked away from this like, that was interesting. And then like Andres and I were talking, it's like, I'll check that out. And then like, so it's like we're here to say like, check it out. Like, it's an oddball flick. I think, if this was a Razzie Redemption, I think we could have a lot of fun with a remake for this.
Yeah.
I think strip 2 plot threads out, keep the rest. You'd have a really good film on your hand. I think its number one crime is it's just too busy. But even being too busy, I like all the stuff that's going on. And I think this is a similar conversation we had in our Strange Days episode. I'd rather a film try and juggle too much than try and not juggle enough and be kind of boring. This is certainly, again, this is not a boring movie.
No, for sure. It's funny when I was saying there's a lot going on, it did remind me of our Strange Days conversation. I'm surprised at how dismissive people are of this film.
I agree.
And well, and I read like Arnold Schwarzenegger handpicked McTiernan to direct Predator based off of this film.
So this film launched a very successful career.
Yeah. Not all of his films have been successful. 13th Warrior and Last Action Hero are two films that I think very much could be in need of Real Deemers episodes. I mean, I do find that Last Action Hero has reached somewhat of a cult status now, so maybe it doesn't need to be fully real deemed, but I am a huge...
But I would hey, I'm a huge Last Action Hero fan. I would talk about, but that's a good point. This man only directed 11 features.
Yeah.
5 of them I'm huge fans of. This one is interesting, and then there's a few I haven't seen. So it's like that. I mean, that's a pretty damn good career. Die Hard with a Vengeance, Hunt for Red October, Last Action Hero, Predator. Well, damn, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm a huge defender of 13th Warrior, even though it seemed to be a troubled production and there's it's questionable on how much of the final product is McTiernan's, and that also seemed to follow him into Rollerball. But again, the way people are so dismissive of Nomads, it makes me want to revisit Medicine Man, which I saw when I was super young, so I don't remember it at all, but that doesn't have the best reviews, but it feels like a lot of people place it above Nomads. So considering how much I actually enjoyed Nomads, I'll have to rewatch Sean Connery in the Jungle.
I have other friends that also enjoy 13th Warrior, so it's like I'm willing to give it a fair shake, especially like it's always been kind of on my radar. But after this, I'd like to see him back in horror territory.
Well, maybe it'll be a future episode. We'll see.
In terms of Schwarzenegger picking him out, I hate the term calling card movie because that's normally something early in a director's career, something that gets them noticed. And sometimes you'll have like a really fascinating flick that kind of just tossed aside as like, well, there was some potential there, yada, yada, yada. And they don't pay attention to like the actual. So maybe it's not as well received or as refined as later work, but there's still some really good stuff in there. I think you can find that with Scorsese. I think you can find that with Coppola, De Palma, et cetera, et cetera. This to me is a calling card movie. It's flawed. It's not perfect. I get the reviews for the confusion. But there's so much cool stuff in here. I can absolutely see why Schwarzenegger would be like, yeah, I want to work with this guy.
Agreed. And the fact that it was done on such a low budget. They did so much with so little, and that in itself is so impressive.
One just funny things about it, man. Again, just like the nooks and crannies of this. That's what I like getting kind of lost in. The gang of transients. Adam Ant, the musician. Yeah. Like where did that come from? And then Mary Warrenov, she's somebody that I always associate with. She came up with like the Andy Warhol crew, but she's in like Death Race 2000, Rock and Roll High School, Eating Raoul. I kind of put her with camp or like not like performances and things that are not meant to be taken 100% seriously. Here she is in a stone cold sober horror thriller in this. So it's like she's such a striking presence. I get that, and she even will pop up in one of my categories later. But like, how did she and Adam Ant end up here? That's yeah. So like, I can't quite wrap my head around it.
I mean, there's a little bit of camp in what's happening with the punks, and I think they know to have fun with their roles. So I think
they're having fun, but I don't think I think you're still supposed to fear them.
Yeah,
I think them having fun shows that there's no rules can hold them. You can't do anything to them. So I'm fine. I can. She's literally, her name is Dancing Mary. That's the thing. So like,
but there's also, I mean, there has to be an element of enchantment because there is that scene where, and it confused me a little bit. So we have Pierce Brosnan following them for 30 hours. And then at one point he's taking photos and then they allow him to take photos and she's doing that dance sequence, right? So I was confused why they let him in. And then suddenly it turned into a nightmare quickly.
Yeah, I think this movie is the strongest in that sequence when he is interested in them and following them up until the end of that sequence, getting home with the wife. That to me is like the strongest 20 minutes of the movie. Because to your point, what do the Nomads want? Like, is it just like they're these dispossessed like spirits? They're obsessed with that murder at the house, or are these like damned souls? Are they trying to recruit more people? We don't really know. And like, I don't think a horror movie needs to explain everything. Like, if the mood hits you right, that's okay. If it's all about the ride, that's okay. I honestly wouldn't have minded a little bit more explanation in that regard. And before we jump into categories, I just have to call out one of our now reoccurring favorite segments in a movie, Random Nuns.
Yes. And that
is off our discussion on Year of the Dragon, which had random nuns. Here again, this time, creepy nuns.
Creepy random nuns.
There's a scene where a similarly transient spirit, this one belonging to a nun, tries to warn the Pierce Brosnan character to like stop paying so much attention to these spirits or else. And that's fine. That makes sense. Okay, it's another spirit reaching out. But then I think they realized, hey, we got to give this scene a little bit more of a punch. So there's like nefarious nuns there too. They're flashing them. They're coming. It's just, I don't know. It's a visually striking scene. It's interesting. interesting. I'm glad it's there. It doesn't really fit into the rest of the movie, but it's here all right.
It almost was my favorite scene. Obviously, we're not in categories yet, but I feel like if they had somehow tied back to it a bit stronger, then it would absolutely be my favorite scene. But that was one of my biggest questions coming out of the film, is what was the main point of that? Because to me, it introduced another level that we hadn't seen before, that there is sort of a spirit that's looking out for him, that's not as nefarious, that's not as insidious. And I loved that. I was like, oh, we're getting a bit more depth with how these spirits operate. And then all of a sudden we get this crazy montage of, quick cuts of nuns flashing him with these creepy faces. And she even says, I believe she says at one point, something to the effect of, you'll never understand what happened here, or something, insinuating that there was something crazy that happened in this building that he just happened to stumble into. And I wish we would have gotten a bit more about that, because that was super, that's when I texted you, this movie is creepy.
Yeah.
Because that was super creepy. And I was like, okay, we're going to go even deeper into this spirit world. And we kind of don't, unfortunately.
I think that's the frustrating thing about this movie, is there's like 3 really solid ideas in here that could each be a feature film. And instead they're like stapled together. They're less than the sum of their parts. You want each one of those to kind of get like the attention it deserves. And by not doing that, I think the whole film suffers. But then again, there are 3 interesting ideas, or 4 or 5. Just there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I don't think the fact the Nomads are obsessed with his house gets as much attention as, what a creepy concept. I move into this place and there's forces beyond my control that are obsessed with this house, and they have some sort of possession of the home. Ooh, that's creepy. But supernatural or not, you could do a lot with that premise.
Yeah, it's a super cool premise. And I love that, he sort of hides it from his wife. He doesn't want her to know because he wants to protect her. And I'll save it for the category, but there's a specific scene that I really, really dug with how that plays out. I also liked, in terms of the quick setup of character for Dr. Eileen Flax, we only get a few quick scenes of how she is in the hospital. And that's all the setup we need. We know her character, we know how she acts, and then the spirits take over and she goes into this crazy madness. But I really appreciated that we didn't have to get a whole massive backstory for her. It was just enough scenes we needed with her interactions with other doctors that tells us who she is. And I love that.
And when Brosnan takes her over as he's dying in the hospital, he ends up injuring her ear and she's getting stitched up. So the exposition that Andreas is referring to, there's some action around it. It's her getting like operated on, and they're asking her questions, and she's like a recent transplant to the city. Again, it looks good. It could be just 2 people sitting in a room talking, and that'd be boring. But the way it's presented, and that's kind of like a metaphor for the whole film, is maybe more interesting than you'd expect.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing before we get into categories, just random. Her friend Cassie, again, I like the friend, but there's moments where the entire movie is turned over to her friend doing detective work on the doctor main character who's been, it's too much stuff stacked on.
We'll get to Cassie.
But there's an entire scene where Cassie is getting exposition from somebody else that we've never met about the story, and I'm like, where are we right now? So again, I like Cassie.
I was gonna mention that in our favorite scenes. It's not my favorite scene. I loved that scene. Again, that's the way to do exposition on a low budget film, because you have this friend character who's looking for her friend, has no idea where she is, right? She had these, I guess we should explain a little bit more about the plot. She gets taken over by these spirits. She has these episodes where she's getting these flashbacks through the Pierce Brosnan's character's eyes. And in these flashbacks, she goes into these sort of frozen episodes where she can't move. And one of the episodes she collapses in the hospital and cuts her face on an IV bag. Well, back then they were IV bottles.
Yeah.
And so she's taken into an MRI machine. They can't notice anything. Everything looks normal, except at one point they say she's kind of comatose, but her brain activity is as if she's having normal conversations with people. And that leads to them questioning, like, is the machine okay? Like, what's going on here? But ultimately, Dr. Flax, Eileen, she leaves the hospital without anyone knowing. So her friend Cassie gets the cops involved, has other doctors involved, and is looking for her because there's obviously something going on with her, and she's really worried about her friend. So at one point, she goes to her house with the cops, and they're looking for clues and to see if she's been there. And the phone rings. It's revealed through this exposition that it's some friend. They never say exactly who it is, but it's someone with knowledge about What did she send? Oh, she said the phrase that was whispered to her by Pierce Brosnan before he died, that was whispered into her ear. She had reached out to a friend to figure out exactly what that meant. And that friend on this phone call does an exposition dump telling Cassie everything that's going on. I actually like that. And Cassie's awesome. I think I loved her.
No, Cassie's great. My problem with that is I feel like the Doctor gets lost in the second half of the movie because it's mainly Brosnan flashbacks. So I feel like we're burning valuable Doctor time and giving it to Cassie instead of her. Now, Cassie didn't do anything wrong. It's a fine performance, and to your point, the call is fine. I just feel like I really miss the Doctor. Like, if I have to lose one plot thread from this and remake the movie, that's the studio's, notes to me, I would lose the possession angle. Because I just feel like and again, in the beginning, it works. I like her. And the little bit of backstory and like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. Because when she gets taken over, she's like bleeding out of her eyes. It's very striking. So it's not like I don't like the material there. But I feel like the story as a whole doesn't care about her as much as it cares about Pierce Brosnan.
That's a good point. We do really lose her, and there's not a lot for her to do in that second half.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost thought, again, like we both said it, there were moments of confusion for us as we're watching this film.
Yeah.
And one of them was I had written down, oh, is he leading her on a path to his own murder so that she could help solve what happened to him? And to me, like, I think that would be a little bit more interesting if we had that.
The thing is, like, sometimes I'll rewatch parts of a movie before we record an episode, just try and pick up, did I miss something before, just find talking points. And like,
you just watch Cassie's scenes.
I hope she's great. Pierce Brosnan's character is a recent transplant to the city. So is the Doctor. Is that why he was able to connect with her versus somebody? Like, why are they kindred spirits? Why her? What's her mission? And they don't spell that out. And again, in a thriller or a mystery or a horror film, I'm okay with some ambiguity. That's fine. But here it's like it was so close to almost having all the puzzle pieces fit together. And that would have been more satisfying in this case. And it just doesn't quite get there. And again, we like this movie. We're defending. It's the point of this episode. Go watch it. But I do think if you reshuffle the deck with all these elements, I think it's a better version of this out there.
I agree. I think there's a lot to play with here, and you could make a stronger version of it. There's a point where Eileen, the Doctor, goes to Pierce Brosnan's wife for help, and ultimately the spirits or punks surround the house and attack them. And, the Doctor is really surprised when the wife can see the spirits too. And that's a new element introduced. But then there's a moment where they have to scramble up to the attic, and one of the main spirits comes in and then just stops pursuing them.
Yeah.
Do you know why that? I was like, why did they stop? What happened?
That's motivation. Motivation's a big thing. I feel like the only reason the Nomads are threatening Pierce Brosnan is because he can see them. And also the ghost nun. This movie sounds just trying to play this back. Wait, what was this movie? What's Nomads? The ghost nun basically tells Pierce Brosnan they're like, move, leave.
Yeah.
And so they're not saying like you're doomed no matter what. They're telling him like lay off. And maybe you'll live through this. So I don't feel like the Nomads are like, yeah, we got to get this guy. They're going after him because he's like, oh, you're interested in us? Well, you're getting too close. So to your point at the end, what is the Doctor's mission, if anything?
Right.
What do the Nomads want? And I think both of those questions are left unanswered. Because it's like Pierce Brosnan gets too close, they kill him. I get that part. The rest of the movie, half of the plot, I feel like is somewhat unresolved. Now, what you could do is, this is not present in the movie. I'm ad-libbing here, but you could have it that his spirit was hiding out in her because he doesn't want to go over to them because they're going to take his soul away. And then at the end, that's her sucking the soul out of him. They have him, and that's why they leave her and the wife alone.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That would have been awesome.
There's some kind of resolution there. That is not implied in the film.
Yeah, I would have loved that. That's a great idea. And we should mention, we haven't, obviously we're spoiling the hell out of this, but we haven't mentioned that after this attack by the spirits, Eileen and the wife, Veronique, get in a car and they leave. They take the advice of the ghost nun who they never met, but Eileen saw in one of the visions, and they leave. They're on a country road. We don't know how long they've been driving, but a simple trick to imply it's been a long time is that I think the doctor was driving first, and then when we cut to later, she's asleep in the back, and now Veronique is driving. And as they're driving, a punk on a motorcycle speeds up next to them, and we can't see his face. And then suddenly he speeds past them and pulls out on a turnout and takes off his goggles to reveal it's now Pierce Brosnan as a punk. And
he is a nomad.
He is now
one of these. Yeah.
Exactly. He's now a nomad, which I thought was a cool little ending.
Yeah.
But there are still some questions there.
Well, I mean, okay, so I love the idea. If you're a nomad, now you can ride a motor. Like, I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. If I got turned into a nomad, would I just do they give you a motorcycle? So it's like I want to know the mechanics behind that. What happens to the doctor and the wife? Does the doctor just like, well, I can't go back to I guess I don't have a job anymore because I have to leave Los Angeles.
Yeah, that I'm okay with. It's more.
But what I'm laughing about is the rules.
No,
what
exactly.
are the rules? Like, yeah.
That's the problem. The rules are not exactly established, which leads to confusion while watching it. The very first vision she has, Eileen, once she's possessed, and I really like the scene, is through Pierce Brosnan's POV, them buying the house that they're going to move into. And at first you're just like, what am I saying? It's very disorienting, as it should be, right? Because if you were possessed and you start suddenly seeing through someone's eyes, you're going to be like, what the hell is happening? So it was done really well. And then you start to sort of figure out, oh, this is what's happening. We're seeing through his eyes of what's going on. But even with that sort of basic quote unquote rule, things are still a little muddled as it goes on. Because then it's like, you're right. Is she done having visions in the end? That's not explained. But again, I dug this film. I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
I'm so glad you liked it. I'm like, all right, you grew up. Like even talking about it, I'm like, I get why it has the reputation it does. Sometimes you're like, oh, I can't. People totally slept on this amazing movie. Again, Strange Days. People totally slept on Strange Days. They still slept on Strange Days. It's Strange Days is coming to the new Bev. And I was like, oh, maybe I should check out Strange Days. This one, I understand why it has the reputation it does, but I think that is doing a disservice to the amount of stuff that does work in the film. And I think to me, the pros do outweigh the cons, even though it has cons. But before we hop into categories, Jeannie Elias, that's who plays Cassie. She does fine work. I am not ragging on Jeannie Elias. It's just the shuffling of the screenplay, who gets how much screen time. That's all. All right. What is the heart of the film?
Knowing when to let go. The film set up that Pommier, played by Pierce Brosnan, seemed reluctant to settle into a more suburban life of teaching instead of being out there in the world experiencing new cultures. He's being domesticated, so he's lost something to study, something to follow that he's been doing for most of his life. So there's an excitement he gets when he discovers there's a new culture just right outside his front door that he can now pursue. And there's a moment where he rethinks his decision to leave the house. He hesitates for a second, but it's his own instinct that takes over, that need for another tribe that he knows nothing about. He needs to study their behavior, as any good anthropologist would do, but he shouldn't. And I think deep down he knew he shouldn't have pursued it. He should have let it go.
I agree. My version of saying that was just play with fire and you're going to get burned.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love movies about obsessives. I love movies where people get themselves into trouble because they can't help it at times. And I think, again, there's a large portion of this movie that is a great entry in that. It's just surrounded with a whole bunch of other stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite scene?
So there's a moment when Pierce Brosnan notices the punks outside the house and he sees the van and he notices they've painted some words on his garage. And then he discovers, some articles in the house that perhaps there was a murder or something terrible done in that house. So not wanting to freak his wife out, he decides, okay, let's just go to bed. And he leads Veronique up the dark stairwell, and then he notices the van cruising down the street. So he decides to gear up without Veronique knowing. And just as he's about to walk out the door, he hesitates for just a brief moment. And Veronique calls out for him from the top of the stairs, and he looks up at her. She wants to say something, but she hesitates too. And it's a quick beat where so much could be said in the silence. And he finally smiles and says, keep the door locked. And then he leaves. There's no music. It's just medium close-ups and great acting. And it feels like a final goodbye. Like they both know it's a final goodbye. And I expected him to die soon after he walked out the door. He doesn't. He dies much later, but it was a final goodbye because that was pretty much the last time Veronique sees what she always knew was her husband before he starts to descend into the madness and be taken over by the Nomads. It's a simple scene, but I love it.
That's a great one, and it kicks off. Look, in the past, my major sin on this podcast is favorite scene becomes favorite like sequence. So I will narrow it down from the discovery of the house being vandalized to then he comes in and he's trying to like make the wife feel better. He knows it's somewhat dangerous, but it's also like he's attracted to that. So, I wrote down a few things. I think they wrote sex, death, pigs, kill on the door.
Yeah.
Which is like, would I be creeped out if that was written downstairs? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
In a movie that's kind of like, what should they write on the door? It's like it seems like a little like, well, I don't know, like sex, death, pigs, kill. Sure, that sounds creepy.
That's true. I was wondering if there'd be more connection to those words, and that's never explained. In the first vision that Eileen has when they're buying the house, they notice there's fresh white paint on the garage, which means that it had obviously just been painted over. Were those words what was painted when previous murders had happened in the house? Is that what they're implying?
My take was they had written that on the door. Like they idolize this house. They keep putting the little mementos and stuff in there. And that was probably what was written. They painted over it. And then they painted over it and they put their message back on.
Okay.
So you got him discovering that. He goes back in the house. The wife's freaked out justifiably. And he goes, it was probably just children. She's like, I don't think those were children. He goes, children come in all shapes and sizes. And to me, that's their two different worldviews where she's like, no, take this seriously. They're not children. And his response is he's still not taking it 100% as seriously as he can. Oh, they're just some adults getting up to some trouble. And he says to her, she's like, is the door locked? He goes, dismissively, the door is locked. The back door is locked. The drawbridge is raised. It's this thing, but it's fun for him in a way it's not for her. And then it plays out, as you said, him trying to get her upstairs and going out. And then it's the chase. To me, again, that whole sequence, I'm in. That's a good movie. And that's not taking into account the confusion. That's not taking into account the other stuff. So if I have to pick what's my favorite part of all that, it's two parts. It's where he just witnesses a murder and he hides under a car and they come looking for him. And the blocking on that I love because it's him freaked out under the car and their footsteps come by and they're right there. And he's going to die at some point. Like that's already spelled out. So is this the moment they're going to get him? And it's not. So kind of playing with the suspense there. But I think I'm going to give it to, even though that's his reprieve, he escapes from them in that moment. He can't help himself. He keeps following them and he runs into them and they see each other and he ends up taking pictures of them and they kind of welcome it. Like, hey, dude, go ahead. Dancing Mary gets up on a car and she's like dancing for him to take pictures. That to me is like the two worlds kind of melding. Our world, this guy attracted to danger, and the spirit world being like, okay, dude, yeah, go ahead. Because he's signing his own death warrant by getting this close to them. That's a very striking sequence. So I like the whole thing. If I have to pick a favorite scene, it's him interacting with the punks directly and taking the pictures of Dancing Mary as she does her routine.
Awesome.
Favorite shot?
There's a shot during this scene at the house when Eileen and Veronique are being attacked by all the spirits / punks. There's this great medium close-up of Eileen where she's in the foreground and sort of in the midground is Veronique, and behind them in the background is this window, and we see one of the punks has climbed up there. This guy in the background crashes just head first through the window at them, and then they rush off. You had mentioned the blocking of the scene when Pierce is being chased. I love the blocking of that shot and the whole attack. The blocking with everyone coming in from all directions is awesome as well.
No, that's great. And that's the thing, even though, again, the motivation behind the house, siege at the end, little muddled, looks cool. Yeah. Even though ghost nuns, not explained, they look cool. So it's like, I get why you put this stuff in. I mean, it's very striking imagery.
I wish the nun scene would just tie it. Like, honestly, that would take this movie to a whole other level.
The other thing is, like, when Pierce wakes up from the vision of the nuns, he collides with his windshield and cuts himself. I mean, again, just like there's so many like little nooks and crannies that just like Oh man, ghost nuns, that's cool. Oh man, like come out of the like, he doesn't just wake up in bed. Like even like him waking up in the car, that's visceral. Like there's just like throughout the film, it's just chock full of like neat little moments. And like,
Yeah, that
yeah, they don't all add up. Okay, I'm going back. I'll make an executive decision because I called it out as a runner-up in favorite scene. I will go with the him under the car as favorite shot because I feel like I think that's narrative economy. To me, that's the most suspenseful moment of the movie because like again, is this the moment they're going to get him and kill him? And playing with that, like dragging that out, and just like they're around the car, they're going to find him. But runner-up is the Die Hard fall. The
Yes.
famous fall from Die Hard.
Yes.
They used it here first, folks. So if you're a big Die Hard fan, certain Hans Gruber plunge is etched in your memory. John McTiernan used it in his very first movie. Pierce Brosnan sends one of the spirits over the side of a railing. It's a similar shot, only this spirit's having way more fun because you can't kill him.
Yeah. A smile spread on my face once I saw that shot and realized. Once Eileen was possessed by the spirits and she's having these visions in the hospital, I had mentioned she falls and cuts her face. She's put on a gurney and rolled to an MRI machine. But there's this overhead shot of her on the gurney and they're wheeling her through a hallway and there's this great overhead shot of her as she's dazed and the lights are flickering and she's sort of trying to figure out what's going on and we are trying to figure it out as well and there's all this chaos, like this muffled chaos going on around her. To me it's just such a powerful shot and it shows how vulnerable of a state she's in. I really liked it. It's very visceral.
I think that's again, like, even with my notes about the doctor being kind of the odd man out in the second half, in the first half, a lot of cool stuff. MVP.
It's Jeannie Elias as Cassie. I love that she was just this unrelenting good friend trying to find out what's going on with her friend. Now, I'm not saying like, sure, the MVP could be Pierce Brosnan. He puts in a great performance, but I don't know why. She honestly stood out to me. I just felt like her acting was supernatural. Well, that's a terrible way of putting it, was really natural. And I just really liked it. It made me look her up and see what else she's been doing because I really loved her acting and her character. Yeah, I don't know why. It stood out to me.
So you were happy that the movie removed crucial exposition from the main character and gave all right, I understand. I get it.
No. I agree with your assessment that the doctor pretty much doesn't have a lot to do in the second half. But even removing Cassie, I don't think they would have given the doctor more to do. I think it would have just been a lot of us being like, what is the doctor doing?
Yeah.
So they
You're
gave
right.
us, yeah, so they gave us Cassie, the MVP.
All right. Well, guys, here at Real Demers, we're all friends, right? This is a safe space. At the risk of a hot take, this is not the hot take. We'll get there in a second. Pierce Brosnan, great actor. I'm a Bond fan. Love him as Bond. Don't necessarily love all the movies. I always think he's great. Even in movies I don't think necessarily knock it out of the park, never his problem. He's the best work he can, maybe sometimes in difficult circumstances. I don't know if a French accent's his thing. I'm just gonna throw that out there. That took a minute, maybe 5 minutes, maybe a half hour for me to kind of wrap my head around. He is playing a French anthropologist. I don't know if I would have gone in that direction. Okay.
Greg, I'm really surprised it took us this long to mention that because it's quite the choice.
In my notes, that's at the top.
Oh, same. I don't know why. I just looked at my notes and I was like, French accent. That's a choice, and I don't know why I missed that.
I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to be negative because you could really have a long conversation about that French accent because it's your lead character is putting on an accent that's not working 100% of the time throughout the duration of the film.
Right.
Why am I bringing this up now? I still think he's the MVP, even with that wacky accent. Pierce Brosnan is giving this his all. He is acting the hell out of this thing, even with an accent that I do not think fits 100%. You get full frontal Pierce Brosnan, if that's your thing. You get Pierce Brosnan getting beat up. You get like he was in Remington Steal the Show. He had not done a lot of lead features at this time. They wanted him for Bond. He couldn't get out. That's a whole thing. I'm sure people are familiar with that. I do get the feeling this is a young, hungry actor absolutely sinking their teeth into, you want to give me a lead role? Great, I'm all in. And even with a questionable accent, I was like, at first, it did take me aback. I was like, oh no, what is happening here? I was trying to process it. Midway into him chasing him, I just kind of let it go. Like, all right, it's there. And then when he's fighting with the wife, when he's freaked out towards the end, I'm like, he's doing a good job. So I give him credit for anchoring this thing, even when I was worried in the first half.
I can't argue against that. And when I think about this movie, I don't even think about his accent. I think about all the other elements that are happening in the movie, including his performance. But it is pretty funny that we both had it at the top of our notes and didn't mention it till now.
It's pretty, guys, it's pretty striking, but like he does good work. So hopefully that makes up for our feelings on that. Underrated element.
Bill Conti.
Okay. Yep.
The composer.
Yep.
This music is fantastic from the opening of the film. Mm-hmm. The music is amazing. You know, your mileage may vary with the rock music, but the score itself is perfect for this film. I loved it. And, you know, I don't need to talk about his other credits. You should know who Bill Conti is, but Rocky, Karate Kid, plenty of other films. He's amazing. And he's no less amazing here.
He was almost my crew member shout out for later on, but one, it's like, well known, he's so well known. It seems like almost like a cheat, but like, no, I'm glad he's getting called out here because it is good.
I mean, as soon as the movie started, I was like, oh, wow, this score's awesome. What about you? It's Cassie. Got it. Okay.
It honestly is Cassie.
Is it really?
Yes. Because I feel like she gets
Cassie.
Again, this movie's crime is it's a hat on a hat on a hat. There's just too much. There's too much happening. And I feel like it would be easy for Cassie to get lost in the shuffle of this because she's the supporting friend of our secondary main character. Like to try and chart that out. And yet here we are talking about her for being really effective and like she comes off as friendly. She comes up as competent. She interacts with the Nomads later, and that's a memorable scene too. So it's like, is she in this movie for 10 minutes? I'm not even sure if she hits the 10-minute mark. If you added up all the time she was in it, she definitely makes an impression. So I guess she wouldn't be underrated because she's your MVP. But for me, I thought she did a really good job.
I'm so happy right now, Greg. I'm so happy. She honestly was going to be my underrated element, but I have to shout out the music. This is probably the first time I could interchange the MVP and underrated with the music and Cassie. Take your pick for those. There's a great, and we already talked about favorite shot. I did make a note of this shot. She gets attacked while she's driving and stuck in traffic in Santa Monica, I think. She gets attacked by the spirits, and there's an awesome moment where one of the spirits is on her passenger side door, opening and hanging off as she's driving. Unfortunately, she meets her demise by running into a semi. So
R.I.P. Cassie.
R.I.P. Cassie.
You made the most of your time.
MVP.
Also, I'll say, like, Alan Autry from In the Heat of the Night TV show as one of the other doctors, he's really good. He completely disappears. But again, he's in the first 15 minutes. It seems like he's going to have more of a presence than he does. But like I recognized him because I remembered the show. I think he's good and like just having like a handful of lines. So it's like even supporting roles are injected with a really good energy here. Again, it's just, I think you could shuffle this for everything fit together a little bit more. And the ghost nun is Frances Bay, who was in Twin Peaks and from the famous Marbled Rye episode of Seinfeld. She's the one that he steals the bread from. So nice. She had a fantastic career.
Yeah, that could be one. The underrated element is the casting, which unfortunately I didn't look up who the casting director was of the film, but McTiernan's really good with that. Just filling out the rest of the smaller roles with people that are really effective. I mean, just even thinking of all the roles in Die Hard, all the henchmen, right? Yep. And the first Die Hard. I always love how he cast all the other New York cops in Die Hard with a vengeance. They all have great personalities, even though they don't have massive amounts of screen time.
Predator.
Yeah.
Hunt for Red October. I think you're right. He was really good with the ensembles. So it's present here. Okay, what scene would you show someone to hook them? I would go the opening possession. Again, like not to spoil anything because it's hard to split. Again, there's so much happening. Creepy Nuns is great, but doesn't really tie into the rest of the story. Him following them, to me, it's the best part, so I wouldn't want to give that away. I think the just encounter in the hospital, I think that'd be enough mystery to kind of whet your palate that you'd want to find out what happened next. What about you?
I was going to go with the rooftop observation deck scene which you had already
Okay.
mentioned. He's sort of having a normal moment with his wife after he had this crazy 30-hour trek of trying to follow the nomads. And he thinks he sees a nomad on the roof, but it's the ponytail of the small little girl. But then I love that reveal when we cut back to him, standing next to him is the nomad that has very similar ponytail. And he starts to freak out and basically just grabs the nomad and tosses him over the edge. And I feel like if I were just to show someone that scene, you'd be like, what is going on? What is happening? I want to know more.
Oh, that's a good one. T-shirt quote.
If you've never run from anything in your life, run from this.
That's mine too.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, it's so good. It's said by the ghost nun. Yeah, I mean, she also had another cool line. There are places with past, places with secrets, things collect. I almost picked that one, but then the way she says that line, if you've never run from anything in your life, run from this. And unfortunately, he just doesn't heed that advice.
I think that goes back to, again, I know we're relitigating this film a little bit. Him taking some act, again, like he never really reconciles with that. He goes home, he tries to kill one of them, but then like there's no evidence of that actually happening because you can't hurt them, they're spirits. He makes love to his wife because it's like basically like, I think he knows he's in trouble, if not like outright doomed. So trying to make the most of this moment, calling this down upon himself, there never is that, hey, we got to get out of here, whatever. So again, like I don't feel Brosnan's proactive. I don't feel the doctor's proactive. I don't feel the nomads are proactive. And I feel like that's what hits in the third act is just like, what is the motivation of these people right now?
Yeah.
What Oscars would you give this?
I would give the Oscar to cinematographer Stephen Ramsey. This is a gorgeous film. There's
Mhm.
so many beautiful shots. I mean, there's one shot I had written down in my notes where it's when Brosnan is following the punks and we see them commit murder, but it's dark shadows and that great 80s steam that's coming from all these
Oh,
different
yeah.
places in
Yep.
the street that we never really see anymore. But that shot is just it's beautiful. So I would give it to him. And I looked them up and they didn't have a massive list of credits on
Hmm.
IMDb. But some notable ones are 52 Pickup and
Ooh.
Madonna's I'll Remember video.
52 Pickup, maybe the best movie Cannon ever put out. That one's a heater, but
Nice.
I'm surprised because again, that's a good flick, and this one looks amazing. So
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'm gonna say Pierce Brosnan best comeback because after that accent, I didn't think there was any coming back from that, and then he pulls out a really really engaging performance. And I'll say I again I hate the term, but it literally lives up to it, so I have to say it. Best calling card movie because it is chock full of eye-catching material and it got him Predator and it launched a successful career. So it achieved that goal. So again, there's a lot of merits here that you can enjoy. From the flaws of Nomads came the awesomeness of Predator and Die Hard. And here at Real Demers, we always like to wrap up with a crew shout out. I think Ramsey and Conti make strong cases, and again, they're part of what makes so much of this movie work as well as it does. But I was trying to find somebody offbeat, and just sometimes I like the deep dive. What else can we find here? So Braun Roylance is the makeup artist, and I think everybody looks great here, and especially with like how Pierce Brosnan's done up in the hospital and just like beat up. Again, everything looks great, but then diving deeper, so they're my choice. But here's some credits from them: Remington Steele, Casualties of War, Back to the Future Part 2, Back to the Future Part 3, Doc Hollywood, Life with Mikey, The Frighteners, Spin City, Mars Attacks, makeup artist for Mr. Brosnan and Mr. Fox, Dante's Peak, Tomorrow Never Dies, The Thomas Crown Affair, The World Is Not Enough, The Tailor of Panama, Die Another Day, After the Sunset. He was Michael J. Fox's and Pierce Brosnan's go-to makeup guy.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
it. I mean, talk about job security. That's great.
Yep. It seems like they're still working together, so that's great. Now, Remington Steele was the first time they worked together, but I imagine he gets pulled into Nomads. McTiernan, a new director. Hey, can you recommend anybody? Oh, sure. Work with Braun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, great call out. I'm going to call out just because of how beautiful of a film this is. I'm going to call out the best boy electrician, Chris Fenney, working with lighting. And they worked on Night of the Comet, New Year's Day from 1989, The Lost Platoon from 1990, and the last credit I could see is Eating from 1990. So not a lot of credits, unfortunately, on IMDb, but Night of the Comet and Nomads. I mean, I'd be happy to have those films on my resume.
Also, Mary Woronov's in Night of the Comet. So did she pull in
Ooh.
them to work on this? That's interesting.
That's a good question.
Now, did you say The Lost Platoon?
Yeah.
That's a David A. Pryor film. When that might be a story for another day. He was very good at like what's hot. So Lost Boys, Platoon, The Lost Platoon. It's a vampire war movie.
Oh my gosh, have you seen it?
I have not seen it. The reviews are not great. He did Deadly Prey and Sledgehammer, which are fascinating future discussions here on Real Demers. He had one hell of a career making low budget movies. He was very good at cashing in on what's popular now. All right, we'll make an action movie out of that. So
I know there's a Titanic 2. Did he do that?
I do that's a good guy. I don't think that was what it is, but I would not put it past him. But that's David A. Pryor's a whole wormhole for another day. But
oh, I love it. That's our catnip.
Absolutely. Well, I knew this was going to be a fun one. I was excited you wanted to check it out.
I'm really surprised. Like, I'm glad we mentioned it, but it's so surprising we didn't mention his accent till.
I thought we were going to spend the beginning of this like I was worried about us ragging on it to start off, and then the fact once the conversation got going, I was like, okay, we don't need to like jump in.
No, I honestly was like thinking about all the elements I really liked that I forgot about his accent because there is so much in this film to like that you can look past it.
It's based on a novel. He's French. There's no conversation where it's like, ooh, like I like Pierce Brosnan, handsome, sexy anthropologist trying to get to the bottom of this. That fits this story, but the accent is a problem. So it's like, was there ever a point where McTiernan's like, maybe we just make him British? Like, what does he? I guess you know
that's the good question because why did he have to be French?
Working this out, I guess you have the mystery of well, what did he say to her, and they have to have it like kind of like decoded.
But then just make it like an Inuit phrase or something.
Exactly. I think you could have gotten around that and have him just use his natural British accent. I do wonder, was McTiernan like, oh, it's fine?
I think it does hurt the film, unfortunately. Looking at so many of the reviews, clearly people are turned off by that aspect of it.
Yep.
Which is unfair.
I get it. I just think there's a lot of like stuff to kind of counterbalance it. I guess to tie this up in a bow, thank God this wasn't the last film of that horror marathon. I would have been so confused at 7 a.m. in the morning after staying up all night trying to process all of this. But thankfully, it gave us this because I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. It was a lot of fun to talk about with you here today. And, if you're into offbeat stuff, and I think that's why you'd listen to a podcast like this to begin with, check it out. And just know, it's probably too busy for its own good, but at least it's busy with stuff that's going to keep you entertained.
If you're a fan of John McTiernan and you haven't seen it, I think it's well worth watching and seeing all the tricks he was able to pull out with a low budget and the film that got him to direct Predator.
Also, if you're a Pierce Brosnan fan, I'm not even joking. He does a hell of a job here. So, yeah. Also, the 80s look, if that's your thing, and I'm not trying to be funny. I think there's a certain, if there's a vibe of that type of movie you used to be into, this thing is dripping with it. And again, that's why I'm surprised the cinematographer didn't do more, because I think they did a great job with what they were working with here.
100% agree.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Real Demers. If you enjoyed what you heard, please support us by leaving a like, subscribe, or review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. You can find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. If you want to reach out and send a comment, you can email us at realdemers@gmail.com. Our music is by Adolfo Delanoy. You can find him on Instagram at Adolfo Delanoy. Thanks again, and be safe.